House of the Dragon Season 2 Episode 6 Small Folk. I am very surprised that so many people have issues with Daemon's storyline this season, especially book fans. I had a lot of problems with episode 5, but Daemon's arc was not among these problems. If anything, I think his scenes were the saving grace of that episode, and I'm going to tell you why I resonate so much with what is happening to him this season. A Song of Ice and Fire's focus on the human heart in conflict with itself is the thing that turned me into a die-hard fan. I never connected so much with fictional characters before. The very real human emotions are a primary focus in George R. R. Martin's world, which paired with the fantasy setting and the magical aspects fascinated me and got me hooked. I finished reading the books right before season 5 of Game of Thrones aired, and it was exhausting to see that episode after episode and season after season, that very theme was abandoned more and more. The personal grievances and motivations of our characters became less and less important. The dialogue was even worse, and in some cases only seemed to be written to show off the abilities of the actors. We rarely ever got scenes that explored our characters' feelings. It's like the prior seasons didn't matter, like their own personal history didn't matter. Jaime, Bran, and Mira, Jon Snow, Sansa, and many more rarely ever got to talk about their past and the things that seemed to drive them. Take Jon Snow for example. Him finding out about his parentage didn't have any impact on his feelings, let alone his own damn death. We never really got to sit with it. We never got to see his true reaction, and it didn't change his character at all. He didn't change at all, and the development of his character stagnated. That is exactly why I didn't relate to these characters anymore. It felt very artificial and robbed them of their humanity. It always felt like scenes were missing. House of the Dragon now dedicating an entire storyline on Daemon facing his trauma is a real treat, and by far my favorite storyline of the entire show. The lessons that he learns will drive his character going forward, and the payoff will feel earned because of the time that was dedicated to this development. To be frank, Daemon really only just became a character to me. I just wasn't really a big fan of what they did to him in season 1. They always seemed to pick the worst possible option from Fire and Blood, and he was pretty much just a villain. After everything he's done, and after running from the consequences of his own actions for way too long, he finally faces his trauma, and it makes him so much more believable and, despite of his cruel acts, relatable. To mix the exploration of Daemon's character with a Harrenhal that just oozes A Song of Ice and Fire with every second it's on screen is just brilliant. It also felt like this episode was the logical conclusion of this arc. Daemon finally faces his guilt and dreams about his brother Viserys. Nothing hurts Daemon more than his relationship with his brother, and he finally allows himself to correct a wrong, even if it's superficial. It would be the perfect ending now too. We accompanied a flawed character to the realization that while he can't change the past, he can very much change how he approaches the future. It was never about making Daemon a good person, but someone who's at least willing to change. I hope this results in a balanced character, because that's what Daemon very much needed. In the episode 7 promo, it looks like the Riverlords finally gather at Harrenhal. I think by executing Willem Blackwood, he'll gain their support and camp outside Harrenhal, laying his own ambitions to rest and awaiting the orders of his queen. Alice Rivers was his perfect companion for the storyline, especially if you look at what lies ahead with Aemond and how she could actually be the one who sets them up against each other. She added another facet of mystique to the already mysterious Harrenhal, and Gail Rankin was the perfect casting choice. Moving on, I'd love to talk about my favorite scene of the episode, and it's the one between Larys and Aegon. Just wow. Matthew Needham is such an underrated actor on this show. People should really give him more credit for adding so much nuance to Larys Strong. This scene was a perfect example of this. After Aemon just scoffs at the idea of him becoming Hand of the King, Larys immediately turns back to Aegon to plant the seeds of his inevitable rise later on. A change that I think is definitely coming, especially after this episode. The scene fully showcases Larys' ambition, but it also does just so much more than that. Larys tells Aegon that he will never run again, and the speech he delivers is one of the best scenes of the entire show. Larys talks about his past, how people always stared at him for being crippled. For just a single moment, Larys allows himself to be vulnerable in front of the very vulnerable and broken Aegon. He lets go of his facade and still manages to secure his place of power. It's such a powerful scene that adds so much to both of these characters. I don't want to spoil what's coming up, but this is brilliant setup and I'm really excited to see this new version of Aegon too. Tom Glencarney is bedridden in these scenes and still manages to deliver these insane performances. Having actors like that on the show is just a blessing. Another powerful scene was the one between Alicent and her brother Gwaine. The power dynamics really shine here. It's amazingly well written. There's talk about Otto and the differences in their upbringing, and finally more thereon. He's of course still in Old Town, which is why Alicent doesn't really know him. Hearing that he's kind might look like comfort, but I think it only adds to Alicent's guilt. She didn't raise him, so if anything, she's likely going to feel even worse. Alan and Addam of Hall were great in this episode too. I really like their relationship and I actually don't mind how they handled Addam claiming Seasmoke. It looks like Seasmoke claimed him, and I wonder how they'll address it in the next episode during the face-off between Rhaenyra and Addam. Was it possible because Addam and Laenor share the same blood? Was it possible because Seasmoke was just prepared to be claimed and therefore even more restless? Is Addam's mother a dragon seed herself? Is it because the Targaryens and Velaryons intermarried? What's up with Laenor? As someone who doesn't care about dragons, this show sure manages to make me question these things. We'll see if that's for better or worse in the next episode. Rhaena taking Nettles' part and claiming Sheep Stealer is all but confirmed with this episode. Many people are heavily criticizing this because it goes against the canon. Even the author himself, George R. R. Martin, doesn't seem fond of it in one of his latest blog updates. To be honest though, as much as George R. R. Martin seems pissed about this, I'm not yet. If roaming around the Vale is lore breaking, then he broke his own lore by having Drogon roam around the Dothraki Sea in a dance with dragons. I think that George is angry about Nettles being cut, and he has every right to be angry. How could it be any other way? He created everything. George only openly criticized 3 things before this: the Hans tourney in season 1 of Game of Thrones, the royal hunt where Robert dies, and the characterization of Littlefinger. Then nothing. If he was angry about those changes, imagine what he would have to say about all the other changes. The Joncons, Aegons and Victarions not being there, and so much more. He completely stopped talking about Game of Thrones after that and only congratulated them for winning awards. The fact that he still talks about House of the Dragon prevents me from thinking that he hates the show. He even praises the show in the very same blog update. He probably likes it overall for the way it feels like a Song of Ice and Fire, but also dislikes the changes, which again makes a lot of sense if you created this world. Nettles being cut will never really make sense to me because they could have just found something else for Rhaena to do, but at least there is an attempt to give Nettles a storyline to other people and in that regard still keep the essence of her character in the show. Fans have every right to be pissed about this change. It'll be interesting to see how they compensate her loss. Addam, Hugh Hammer and Ulf the White are all commoners who claim dragons, so the small folk focus in regards to the horrors of war is still there. Rhaenyra cheating on Daemon with Mysaria might take the place of Daemon cheating on Rhaenyra with Nettles. Daemon then having a wholesome relationship with his daughter Rhaena after his development at Harrenhal is something that I would like. So no, at least for me it's not yet over. Instead of simply cutting and not replacing her, the show seems to give Nettles a story to different characters. A weird change to be honest, but I'm willing to give it a chance. Game of Thrones cutting Lady Stoneheart, for example, was never an issue in my opinion. The issue was that Jaime and Brienne did a Westeros world tour with nothing meaningful that replaced the storyline from the books. That's what made it suck, but that's not what's happening here. Yet. If you cut, you have to compensate. And we will see how successful this will be. The food ride was okay. At least they addressed the blockade and why the small folk is directing their anger at the Greens instead of the Blacks, which was one of my criticisms of last week's episode. They still should be able to get food, of course, given that King's Landing is surrounded by mainland, but hey, at least we got to see the shepherd. Rhaenyra and Mysaria. It's already getting review bombed on IMDb because, of course it is, I don't get the outrage at all. Rhaenyra and Laena seem to have a thing in fire and blood, and Cersei and Daenerys both have sex with women in the books, Then there's Alicent's and Rhaenyra's relationship and all those scenes in which they seem to have sexual tension. It's consistent with what House of the Dragon did, and it's consistent with how women are portrayed in A Song of Ice and Fire too. This also doesn't really seem to be romantic, at least not yet. To me, this seemed like pure lust. Rhaenyra is a bisexual woman who's alone and, well, look at Mysaria. All I'm saying is that I get it. Moving on, there are other things that do deserve criticism in this episode, even though, in my opinion, it's a fantastic one. Corlys and Rhaenyra never talking about what happened to Laenor doesn't make sense to me. Why would Corlys serve the woman that killed his son? That's what he thinks, and nothing contrary to that was ever revealed to him. They should have had a scene about that by now, and they still should have one. This, along with the Seasmoke questions, is something that I'll definitely keep an eye out for. Rhaenyra convincing Steffon Darklyne to claim a dragon would have also just been enough. It wouldn't have made her a monster, because those are the kind of desperate decisions that are being made in times of war. I really don't like that the show always leaves a way out for Rhaenyra. It limits the characters so much, and it's starting to really get on my nerves. They have an actor that can pull off Rhaenyra's fierceness. Why not just use them? So, all in all, House of the Dragon Season 2 Episode 6 is a fantastic episode in my opinion. It might come down to recency bias, so we'll definitely re-evaluate after the season ends. It seems to be one of my favorites of the entire show so far. Eileen Shim, the writer who delivered my favorite episode, Season 1 Episode 8, is a perfect fit for character-focused episodes like this, and character-focused episodes like this are a perfect fit for people like me who are there for the human aspect of the story, rather than CGI things doing CGI things. I give House of the Dragon Season 2 Episode 6 a 9 out of 10. That's all I have for today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to subscribe and see us later.